This course is about the latest version of Angular, which at the moment is Angular 8. Now that sounds like you missed a lot if you're just starting with it. The good thing is you didn't, because Angular versioning sounds more complex than it is. You could argue that thus far there actually only were two major big versions of Angular. The first one was AngularJS, also referred to as Angular 1. That was released years ago and worked totally different than the Angular you're going to learn in this course, and you shouldn't use it for new projects anymore. Instead, the Angular team worked on a completely new version, which is simply referred to as just Angular, so without AngularJS, which was initially released as Angular 2. And sometimes on the internet you still just find content on Angular 2, and that typically also means that it's about Angular, Angular 8, 7, and so on in general. But more on these other versions in a second. So Angular 2 was released in 2016, and it was a complete rewrite of AngularJS. It works totally different, has a lot of different concepts, and there are basically no similarities between these two frameworks. So you don't need to know AngularJS to learn Angular in whichever version. If you know AngularJS, it won't be a problem, but it unfortunately also won't help you much. Okay, so that's Angular 2, but this course is about Angular 8, so what happened in between? There was Angular 4, 3 was skipped for internal reasons, so the next version was Angular 4, and then there were a couple of other versions, 5, 6, 7, and now we have Angular 8. The reason for this variety of versions is simply that the Angular team releases a new major version, as they call it, every 6 months, roughly. And they do that not to change everything with every release. Instead, all the code you're learning here basically would still work in Angular 2 with very few exceptions. All the code you do learn here, of course, works with Angular 8 because I do constantly keep this course up to date with the latest version. But there haven't been many changes between Angular 2 and 8. So these new numbers can be a bit confusing at first. The Angular team is simply having this schedule of releasing a new bigger version every 6 months, where they have the option of introducing some bigger changes, but they rarely do this. And if they introduce bigger breaking changes, they always do it in a backward compatible way, so that what you will learn now will also still be relevant in a year or two. That simply explains Angular 8, and that simply is why we have that many versions. The major shift was from AngularJS to Angular, though.